I am really excited because, and I'm wondering if excited is the right word, but for lack of a better word, I'm really excited because my mom is coming to visit. I have not had any family come out to visit me here in Atlanta ever since I've moved. I've had two of my friends from Pakistan actually come and visit in November of last year, which was really nice to have like friends from home coming and staying with you in your new place. But I've not had family visit yet. And it's a big deal. Like, I know for a fact that I'm in Atlanta at least for another year. I'm not really sure where I'm going after that, if I'm staying here or I'm going back to the Northeast or somewhere else. Lord knows I'm trying to find ways out of this country because I think this country has revealed that the American dream is a lie, and that is obvious. We all know this, but I think we can talk about that later. But because I have the tendency to trail off, I am elated about the fact that my mom is coming to visit. I've been wanting her to come visit. I think that there's a few reasons. Yes, I want family to come visit for sure. But I think that she's also been up in the Northeast for such a long time. She's never had an excuse to come down here. And so I just want her to kind of get a break from her life, I suppose, and to come down. But I think also it's really important, whether she knows it or not, or whether it's articulated or not, because I feel like a lot of us in Desi families especially, we don't really articulate why something is important to us effectively. But I know that she always knows that I'm going to land on my feet. Shahana is resilient. Shahana lands on her feet. But I know that she's still my mom. And at the end of the day, she worries about all of her children. And, you know, we've all kind of made the decisions we've made. And, you know, she's seen her children kind of follow the paths that were laid out for them. And she has all kinds of feelings, I'm sure, about each one of her children. But ultimately, she wants to know that her children are safe, they're happy, they're prospering, they're thriving, whatever that is. In a weird way, I actually want her, especially after my divorce, like the idea of, she saw the way that I kind of went through that whole process, and Lord knows she was extremely supportive, but she saw the toll. She saw the changes in me as a person. She saw that the light was gone for a while in my eyes, and I want her to be able to come here and see that I'm okay, that I am more than okay. I think that's really important for me as her child, sure, but I really want her to be able to come here and see that I'm fine and that I quote unquote I'm getting by, I'm making it. Her child is okay. I think that's really important. And maybe I also do feel a pressure of like I'm trying to figure out, like, am I faking it? I don't think I am. I think that I've come a long way from where I was a year ago. A year ago was a completely different scenario. I just picked up my suitcases and I moved to this empty apartment. I really want to give her that ability for her to sleep at night knowing that her child is more than okay, that she's picked herself up and she's created a little piece, she's found a world of her own. It may not be perfect. It may not be, it's got the building blocks. I think that's really important for her to see. I want her to sleep at night knowing that her kid is okay. I want her to see the little world I've created for myself. I want her to see what a different life could look like. I want her to see that I've made connections, that they're professional, personal. I want her to see the little routine I've created for myself. You know, the paths I walk, the places I cycle, the restaurants that I frequent, the restaurants that I frequent. I want her to see all of that so that she could just go like, yes, my kid is okay. I want to give her that peace of mind, that ease. This isn't to say that my mom is like this anxious person that's, you know, worried all the time, but you know, she's not that kind of a person that's going to articulate these things to me. A lot of our relationships in Desi families are felt more than they are, or a lot of the things that we're experiencing emotionally, they're not articulated verbally, and oftentimes if they are articulated verbally, they're articulated in the worst ways possible, but they're felt. The depths of our relationships are felt in a very deep sort of way. And we haven't really been taught to communicate well with our parents. And Lord knows, like, I didn't grow up in a family where hugging even your parents was normal. Hugging your siblings, not at all. It's even to this day, it's awkward when I meet my siblings, like, do we hug? Do we not hug? But that doesn't mean that there isn't love and we don't care. And I'm not exonerating or justifying. It's just a part of what it is to be a Desi kid. We just don't have that. And Lord knows, I feel like we're working really hard to change that today. So I'm cleaning up the apartment. I want it to look its best. I mean, I'm typically really good about maintaining like a nice home, for sure. I think I do a good job at that. My home is my habitat. I need a sense of control. I need a sense of, does it all flow? Does it all work? Is it easy on the eyes? I want to be able to come home and look at my space and just feel that relief. So I know that all of those pieces are going to be there. I just want her to come and feel, okay, this is good. This is good. So that's what's been keeping me busy, or something to look forward to. I have been traveling a lot. Ever since I moved to Atlanta, one of the kind of conditions with my workplace in Philly was that I would travel to Philly a few times a year for work. Totally fine. I also took, like, I made some adjustments financially in order to move to Atlanta. I mean, in retrospect, when I look back, I really feel like I moved to Atlanta kind of in a rush. Like, I wanted so badly to kind of feel like I had some kind of control, some agency over my own life after, like, saying goodbye to what I see as like my previous life, if you will. So I rushed it. It thankfully turned out to be a good thing. I'm grateful for it, but definitely feels like I rushed it. But I've had to travel a lot. I've had to kind of move around more than I'd like to, than I'm comfortable with. And I say this as somebody that loves traveling. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but May of this year, I actually went to Thailand on an unexpected trip. It turned out to be, which was really funny because it was lined up perfectly with my 1-year divorce anniversary. And it was a bit bizarre to think about because, like, I didn't expect for it to happen, and I didn't know what I was going to do or where I was going to go, and it just kind of worked out that way. And the reason why it's a bit bizarre is because the year before, when I had filed for divorce, I kind of went on an unexpected trip to Greece. And I'm sure I'll get into that another day because I feel like that's like a whole other story about how those things kind of happen. But I kind of feel like May is now going to be a traveling month for me, and possibly an unexpected traveling month for me, which is, I'm going to see if that actually becomes a thing. It's like you have these gut instincts, gut feelings about certain things that happen in your life. And I think that's what's happening with the month of May. Then I came back to Atlanta and I started taking on a lot of work before I went up to the Northeast again in June. And then I was up there for 6 weeks. I ended up taking on a lot of work. I decided to shift gears. And the reason I decided to shift gears was truthfully because one of the things I realized was, I didn't realize, I knew I was in debt. I was in more debt than I am comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with debt to begin with. It's kind of the nature of being in America that you must be in some kind of debt. You need to have some kind of credit history in order to just be recognized as a human being in this country, and it is fucking annoying. I don't like it at all. I feel like growing up in Pakistan, I didn't have any debt. And then suddenly I was in debt here. And, well, not suddenly, it happens over time. And I also feel like there's a lot to be said about financial literacy. I do not think that I was financially literate. I was 35 years old and I was going through divorce, and I realized, wow, I am not financially literate. No one taught me to be financially literate. And I think a lot of us feel that. Women in particular, South Asian women specifically, I think even men in South Asia are not financially literate. We are not taught to be financially literate. And I reached a point of debt that was, now when I look back, crippling. It was upwards of $25,000. I can say that now. And a lot of it accumulated over the course of my life in the US. I mean, all of it did, but over the course of my marriage. And I'm not going to sit here and blame my marriage for it. Yes, there's contributing factors, but I'm also holding myself accountable. There's lots of reasons why it got to that extent. And I can say definitely that was not one of the reasons why I got divorced, not at all. But I can say divorce is expensive, especially when you are paying for it and you are paying to just get out of a marriage and restart your life. It all adds up. And so I made a decision, a very specific decision when I moved to Atlanta, that a part of restarting my life meant, and healing meant letting go of the baggage of my previous life. And that is in the form of emotional baggage, psychological baggage. Yes. Literally, in my case, I uprooted myself and moved to a completely new place. So physical baggage, if you will. Physical baggage could also be my body. I'd gained more weight than I'm comfortable, or I was comfortable with. And that was a series of enduring the last 2 years of my marriage and then being on medication as I had severe anxiety. I gained 30 pounds more than I was comfortable with. So there's the physical baggage of that as well. But then there's also the financial baggage. I think that's something that we just don't take into account. Restarting your life may feel like a clean slate, and it absolutely is in many ways, but it won't be a complete clean slate until you find ways to let go of the baggage. So for me, financial debt was baggage from my past life. And I wanted to make a concerted effort to work through all of it. Physical baggage, mental baggage, financial baggage, all the ways. And so I decided to look at it from a tunnel vision perspective, blinders on, nothing else would take priority. Nothing. I went into, this is the goal, this is the focus. Everything else can take a seat for now. This is what I need to focus on. I need to educate myself. I need to think about what it means to be financially free, independent. What is true freedom? What are the options available to me? I had to employ a level of discipline when it came to money that I had not needed to exercise in a really long time. But I saw it as something I was going to take head on. I wasn't going to shame myself for any decisions that were made in the past. I wasn't going to relitigate those reasons. I wasn't going to blame myself or anyone else. I was just going to say, this is what I'm starting with, and this is it. This is what I'm starting with. I worked hard. I said yes to whatever opportunities. I decided this is something that I'm absolutely going to work through. Any job. I currently have 3 consistent streams of income, and I took on, and these are streams of income I had to create for myself and I had to actively pursue. I came to Atlanta and I looked for more work. I created more work for myself. I said yes to everything that I could humanly do. I told myself, for now, this is where you're at. And I battled with myself internally a lot as well. I said, I'm tired. I'm so tired. I have been working since I was 16 years old. I am tired and I don't want to have to restart my life again. I don't want to have to start again. But I had to remind myself, Shahana, you are the one that's going to get yourself out of this. There's a lot of learnings here. Okay. The first thing I want to say is that as a divorced woman that's had to restart her life, it has become a few things have become abundantly clear to me. I've been having these conversations with like my family, my mom, friends of mine that are single, as I am on this journey of financial freedom, financial literacy. And a lot of this seems pretty obvious, I understand, but things that are seemingly obvious when discussed intellectually, in the doing of it, you realize what it actually means. It became abundantly clear to me that whatever decisions I make for myself today as a now 36-year-old, these decisions have to take care of Shahana when she's 60, 70, however long I have here. Now, isn't that obvious, Shahana? Well, here's the thing. When you are married, you kind of come together as a team. You have a partner. And it's not to say that you rely on your partner financially. It is up to you ultimately and your partner what the financial agreement is. I can tell you that in my case, we had an agreement that was based completely off of proportion. Proportionate to our incomes. So, there were times in our marriage where, he made, we never believed in like a 50-50 split, because it made no sense if, for example, my take home was $5,000 and his take home was $2,500. This is not the case. I'm just using this as an example. Because if our rent is, for example, $2,000, it does not make sense for me or him to be putting $1,000 of a $2,500 income towards rent, whereas for me it would be, I would have $4,000 left over. You get what I mean? So we followed a proportion based financial kind of breakdown and agreement. And I know a lot of people don't do it that way, and that's totally fine. Ultimately, it comes down to what your agreement is with your partner. That's what we did. When you are married, the basic understanding is that whatever agreement it is, you are kind of sharing this mental load. It's not, there is a financial load that is being shared for sure, and there is a benefit, especially in this country. It actually benefits you to be married, especially when you're filing taxes. Trust me, I know. I just started filing taxes as a single person and it hit me. But you're sharing the mental load when it comes to your finances. You're sharing the financial load when it comes to your finances. When you get divorced, whatever that plan was, however long you were married, in my case, it was 6 years. That plan, whatever it was, halts. It comes to an abrupt halt. It is finished. That plan is finished. It is abundantly clear to me, it always has been, but now even more so, and especially I would say this to women, every decision you make needs to take care of you when you are older. All of it. I was discussing this with my mom, that I have to work off of the premise now that I may be single for the rest of my life. And that's not a bad thing. I am absolutely against the idea that you get married or you remarried for the sake of the fear of being alone. Never, never would I do that. It is much better to be alone than to be in a marriage that you don't want to be in. I have to work off of the premise, accept the premise that I may never be remarried. I think everyone needs to accept the premise that you may be alone at some stage in your life. And like I said, this isn't to say that you start thinking about relying on your partner financially, or that they are the sole bread earner, or whatever it is. Again, it goes back to what your agreement is. But it is abundantly clear to me that we must work in a way that we are taking care of ourselves forever. Yes, if your marriage works out, great, and you have each other and you've kind of worked out a system and a plan, a 5-year, 10-year plan and all that stuff, and it works out great, lovely, beautiful. But if it doesn't work out, you don't want to be 60 and scrambling to figure out, how am I taking care of myself? Do that work now. And that's what I'm doing. I said, what am I doing today that's going to look after 60-year-old Shahana, 70-year-old Shahana, however long I have? I think it is important to work off of that premise. Of course, life changes. You could always find somebody and, that partnership works and it's lovely. But I think as somebody that's gone through this, it is very clear to me that needs to be the case. And I know, especially Hamare culture mein, as Desi women, we discuss this, especially, ऐसे कुछ खानदान होते हैं where like वालिदैन कहते हैं कि बेटियां को पढ़ाना लाजमी है. बेटियां should have jobs. And they're saying it because it's coming from that place. कि कल को खुदा न खास्ता कुछ हो जाए, your daughter knows how to be on her feet and she knows how to get a job and she has. But I would just take that a step further, that regardless of the circumstances, as a woman specifically, you should be cultivating that mindset from the get-go. Sure, there's so many, I completely get it, especially as a Desi woman, like you may not be, or we may not be in families that cultivate that mindset. Having that mindset even having access to that mindset is often a privilege, right? But if I may, from my place of privilege that I now have as a woman that reflects on her own journey, it is important. It is important. Work off of the premise that you can be alone. What are you doing for yourself that is going to protect you in the future? Another thing I want to say is, do not let anybody shame you for wanting what you want. Do not let anybody shame you for the quality of life that you want. Do not let anybody shame you for wanting more out of life. Now, obviously, there's nuance to that. You know, if you know, the approach is I want all this and you have to make it happen and I'm just going to sit. That's not how it works. It is about, again, what is agreed upon. Is it equitable between partners? Is it fair? Is it equitable in terms of time, labor? Is it equitable? But do not let somebody tell you that you do not deserve more, or that a certain quality of life is outside of your reach. Work for it. Envision it. Make it happen. I think I felt that a lot. And I always knew that there is more for me. I think that a big thing that we are often taught is that money doesn't bring you happiness. And especially as women, we're taught this or we're told this because there's this whole notion of like, oh, she's a gold digger. You don't want to be labeled a gold digger. Ke paas paise ke piche. There's this idea of this trickle-down effect of like, money is something not to be sought, especially for women. It makes you this, it makes you that. And therefore, it's tied to, you know, this whole notion of money does not bring you happiness. Halanki hamare culture, maybe there's a lot of like bullshit around that because we place all these burdens on both men and women about जब तक आपकी कमाई ये नहीं है या आपकी education ये नहीं है तो you're not worth it. So it's like a weird hypocrisy almost. But I'll let that, I'm trailing. The brain goes all over. What I'm trying to say is there's this whole thing about how money doesn't bring you happiness. And I know where that's coming from and why it came into being. But what it absolutely does provide to you is security, safety, opportunity, options. When you don't have money in your account, you do not have peace of mind. When they say money doesn't bring you happiness, it's coming from somebody who is privileged as fuck and has money that, you know, it's like it's trying to make sure that you are not succumbing to greed. Money does not bring you happiness. This isn't about greed. This is about security, options, opportunity. Money absolutely provides you with that. It provides you with the ability to sleep at night. It provides you with peace of mind. So, women especially, don't let anybody tell you that you don't deserve peace of mind, that you don't deserve options and opportunity and safety and security and the ability to leave a situation that is toxic or dangerous or not fulfilling. Having money in the bank will do that for you. I'm learning a lot about this. I did not have an entrepreneurial mind growing up. Like I said, I came from a very middle-class background. I started working when I was 16. I had to. I didn't go to college. A lot of things worked out for me, thankfully, but I had to work hard. As I say that out loud, I'm also debating what is working hard, because imposter syndrome is real. So going back to my priorities this year, it just so ended up happening that I decided to really heavily focus on, I want to get out of debt. And it wasn't just about like, oh, these financial constraints are so crippling. They absolutely were crippling, but it was also from a place of, I want to close the books on my previous life. I want to close that chapter. I want to let go of any baggage that came from that life. And I can tell you that while I'm not fully there, what was $25,000 in debt today is $2,500 in debt. And by the end of this year, I will, inshallah, be out of debt. This year for me was a matter of damage control, the post-mortem, if you will, of my previous life. I had to face some very hard truths. I had to endure some very harsh realities. And I had to exercise a level of discipline that I have not exercised in a really long time. It's like, I don't need to buy any new clothes. My fridge can be empty. Although that's also probably because I'm not the greatest cook, but anyway. When any new payment would come and hit my bank account, I would not let it sit there. I just wouldn't. The moment a new payment would come through, I would send it straight to debt. I said, nope. This past year was the postmortem, the damage control. What are the pieces? What are the pieces I have to pick up? Whilst also healing. Healing is in the doing. It is you cannot heal in a vacuum. You have to expose yourself. So there's been a lot of that's been happening at the same time. And inshallah, next year, the goal is rebuilding. And it feels more like building than rebuilding, because in a way that feels like it's not that I'm rebuilding my life. It feels like I'm leveling up. I'm building from a clean slate, sure. Because to say that I'm rebuilding is like I'm rebuilding from where I was. Now it feels like I'm building from where I am, which means, or what I'm trying to say is, it means that with the knowledge that I've now acquired, with the fortitude that I now have, so I'm building from this place. I think that's what next year is going to be. So I've been thinking about failure a lot, and the various ways in which I have, quote unquote, failed over the past few years. Failed in life, failed in my pursuit of certain goals. And how my definition of success has changed. There's so many ways that I could look back and go, I have failed because my marriage did not work out. I have failed because I moved continents to a new country to pursue a life in a career in which success means a few things in a very basic level. Like as an actor, like, oh, you've not made it in a big show. Are you a failure? As a filmmaker, have you made any films? No, or you're a failure. You've been in crippling debt. You're a failure. Your marriage fell apart. You're a failure. You don't have a massive Instagram following. You're a failure. And I say this as somebody that has an Instagram following, but comparison culture is very real. One could say, well, why are you, like, you're growing at this snail pace, if you will. You're a failure. You put on all this weight. You're a failure. I'm saying this as somebody that's like, these are the lenses through which we look at success and failure. This past year was let go of by my agent after being with her since 2019. That stung, and it definitely sent me down this spiral of failure. What am I? The reason that I was given was because not that there was anything wrong with me as an actor. It wasn't about my talent. It wasn't about my professionalism. The reason was that they were downsizing in general. But the mind being what it is, you start wondering, is it because I suck? I am in a post-October the 7th kind of world, especially in the industry here in the US. And so as somebody that's been extremely vocal about Palestine, one can't help but wonder, is it because I am quote unquote vocal about political things, even though it is not a political matter? It is a moral matter. I find it really frustrating when people are like, oh, why are you being so political about this? Like, why are you sharing your views online? Why are you being political? You know, or when people tell me that, yeah, I don't really know about what's going on in Palestine and Israel because I'm not a political person. It's not a political issue. It is a moral issue. It is probably the moral issue of our time. I don't know how anybody can sit back with the knowledge that children are being murdered in the thousands, and we are just supposed to sit back and say, oh, well, it's not me. It's not my family. They probably did something to deserve it. Sucks to be them. They are children. And I feel it even more now as a US citizen. I do not want to be complicit. I do not want to be funding it. And going back to the industry, I definitely do not want to be a part of an industry where I have to censor my views or be afraid. There has been a lot of fear, for sure, ever since October the 7th in all industries about being able to talk about this because you risk your livelihood. And I've often said that there are different ways of resisting. If you can't be open about it online because of fear of risk to livelihood, safety, all these different things, perhaps go to a protest. If you can't do that, boycott certain things. A lot has been changing for me. I was talking to a friend of mine about this, that it's kind of interesting that with this massive life change that's been my divorce, so many other things are changing as well. My priorities are changing. The way I see the world is changing. I'm still a creative. I'm still an artist. I'm still a storyteller. I love acting. I love all of that. But I think how I want to pursue that is definitely changing. It's hard being in the industry over here. I'm not going to downplay that. I know rejection. I know rejection very well. I've developed a very, very thick skin. It's really hard to explain to people why. you may live in just constant auditions and how you have to be grateful for that. You're taught to be grateful that you even get to audition. And I think that is just so annoying and so fucked up that you have to constantly be grateful. But at the same time, I know that you are probably being seen out of hundreds of people, and that in itself is something to be grateful for. But I don't like the rules anymore. I don't like the rules of this game. And so I'm learning things and redefining what it is to be successful today. What is important to me, what kind of life I want. And it's evolving. I am, as I often say, I am a developing story. I'm a human being. Of course, I feel comparison culture. And especially if you're a Desi kid, you absolutely feel comparison culture. Flan ka beta, flan ki beti. It's ingrained. We can't help it. I'm not immune to it. But I've more and more been trying to think of myself as chapters in a book. That life is not one thing. That it is important to allow flow, allow yourself to submit to the flow of where your life is taking you, to understand that maybe Shahana, the chapter right now is this. While I may not have made strides in my career in the way that I wanted to make strides, while I may not have grown on socials in a certain way, while I may have not booked the part, while I may have lost my agent, what did I gain? I gained insight into the world. I learned more about something that is important. I focused heavily on financial freedom, understanding the parameters of this world through the lens of being a woman, being a person of color. I fought for my survival. Maybe right now the chapter is that. This was the chapter that was Shahana takes another step to free herself from the shackles of a hyper consumerist capitalist society and rise out of the ashes of her previous life. Life is not just one thing, it is many things. And as always, I say, I want to live life for 80-year-old Shahana if I'm fortunate enough to get to 80. I want to be able to look back and go, she lived a full life. If I'm meant to tell the stories that are embedded and deep within me, they will, I will have no choice. They will come out in whatever shape or form. If I'm meant to perform more and to create more, they will happen. I will get there. And I say this as somebody that has ADHD, that procrastinates. I have my issues. I'm not here to not hold myself accountable. I know what my issues are. But I think it's important to make peace with where you are in life, what chapter this is meant to be. I've been chasing so many dreams for so long. And it's so weird. I was discussing this with another friend of mine who is also divorced. I said that it is confusing to me and weird to me that like getting divorced also has me doubting other aspects of my life that existed before I even met my ex. Before I even, like, why should my perceptions about these core things that were a part of my life, why is that affected? And, you know, she even said, it's because your partnership with somebody is something that we subliminally tie to our identity. It just ends up happening. And the brain constructs a narrative about what life should be like going forward with this. This is the life that we've constructed, and this is where we're going to go until we close our eyes. So when you cut or you end a certain chapter in that way, it kind of has it does have a trickle down effect on everything else. And you start reevaluating and questioning and wondering everything else about the decisions you've made for yourself. There's anxiety around that. There's fear around that. There's a lot of self-doubt. And I think as somebody that's looking back now on especially this past year, I would tell you, if you are going through this, hold yourself, afford yourself some grace. I've done a lot of that. That is actually one thing I'm glad I did this past year. Afforded myself a lot of grace. Go at your own pace. Just go at your own pace. You are restarting, rebuilding, picking up the pieces. I think there's more I want to say about failure, and I don't remember it, which is okay. But I think that for now, this is enough. I started to feel failure about this podcast because I did just like 2, and then I had to focus on travel and work. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I am a failure. And then I had to ask myself, okay, let's think about that. By whose standard, by what measure, what makes you a failure right now? Like what? And then I was like, okay, well, by the measure of when you create something, there has to be a consistency to it. There has to be a structure to it. There has to, like, yeah, sure, okay. Fine, that is how it is done. But who is the boss of this endeavor? Me. And if me, the boss, this one-woman show, realizes that her attention is needed elsewhere, that she is underwater because of the personal and financial and professional demands of her life, then that's okay. She can always come back to these things when she truly can. Mm-hmm. And then I thought about that and I was like, that's actually how I want people to feel as well. I am a full human being. I say this often. I'm a living, breathing, thinking, feeling creature. We all are. We have other commitments. We have seasons of life where something else needs to be addressed. And if we don't address it, it's going to lead to everything will crumble. Everything. The house of cards will fall apart. So while obviously there are rules, there's structure, there's a clear plan for everything about what success looks like. Maybe success can be the ability to sleep at night in your own bed, knowing that you're paying for your bills. You're able to go for walks, to go for a ride, to get coffee from your favorite coffee shop, to travel if you can. What a luxury to so many. And while obviously there's so many things that we could be grasping for, sky's the limit, shoot for the stars, all the things, and that's lovely and wonderful, and why not chase what you want to chase? But perhaps do not let the pursuit of something diminish the life that you have now. That until you don't reach whatever milestone, you are a failure. and that the life that you have right now is inadequate. Change your measure of success, what it is to be successful. I can tell you, looking back, that while the little girl that I was had huge ideas of what it meant to be successful, I know that this life that I have now, this little apartment that I pay for, oh, that little girl would have fucking loved it. This is success. Peace of mind is success. Being able to breathe easier, lighter, is success. In a weird way, I feel like I've worked so hard my entire life. I've worked so hard my entire life. I have stumbled, I have fallen down, I've been on my knees, and so many times. And I know the amount of work that is ahead of me. And that can be intimidating, it can be frightening, it can be already exhausting. But a part of me also feels like I haven't even gotten started yet. Like I have so much more to offer. The only difference now is that I'm no longer shaming myself for not being at a certain point in my life. Glass half full at all times. Okay, I think that's that. If you are still here, if you are still listening, as always, thank you for your time. Thank you for giving me a chance. And that's it.